Anyway, okay, well, today, let's see, what are we? Got the tea and me at 3, so hopefully you brought your tea. I have my new little mug there. It's not often that I'll just walk by something and like, I want that. And this was one of those things where I walked by and I was like, I want that. So here we go. If you're having tea as well, great. I'm having a little snack too, but I'll try not to have many of those because it's probably noisy. Hi there. Thank you for being here. Can I ask you to let me know, is this sideways for you? I have my phone sideways because that's how, oh, Danielle, look at us. Look at us. We're finally seeing each other. Um, Danielle, will you tell me if the recording is sideways for you? That's just the way the magnet fits on this thing. And I was like, shoot, I'm gonna have to try it anyway. So we'll see. But here we are at tea and me at 3, or tea with me at 3. Did y'all bring tea? You gotta sip on tea. I mean, it's tea and me. All right, so today we're talking about a neurotypical me living in a home, a neurodiverse home, and how the grief recovery method applies for me in my life and how I help other people. But this can be helpful outside of neurodiversity. It could be helpful for any type of situation, honestly. But I know there are a lot of us out there who do have family members who are neurodivergent, and you know that can present some challenges and some grief moments for sure. So I just want to talk with you a little bit about that and how I apply the grief recovery method. Um, the first, I want to tell you just short little story. I met someone for a totally different reason, not grief recovery related. I was seeking a service in town, and so I met this person, and they just launched into talking like we had been best friends forever, which was great. That's always great when that happens. And as he's going on, and I mean, it went on for quite some time. And in that time, he told me about that he identifies as high functioning autism, and it's been kind of a big eye opener for himself. And he was telling me how some of the difficulties that come up in his life. And this one little snippet was like, that's it. That's exactly what it is. So he was telling me about his little toddler, his 2-year-old, 2 or 3, toddler. And he said, it's things like this where the toddler, she was asking me for a drink. She went to the refrigerator. She was saying, Daddy, drink, Daddy, drink. And so he got into the refrigerator and he gave her a drink. And then he goes about his business. And then within a few minutes, or, a short time, the toddler is coming back to him and saying, open, open, because he didn't open it. And so what that is he's very literal. He's very literal. And the baby asked for a drink, so he gave the baby a drink. But his mind didn't know to go to the next step. That wasn't part of something he had really connected together before. And so the challenge is it just illustrates so beautifully very common daily situations that we have here in our home. So those of us who might identify as neurotypical, we would think like, but why didn't you open it? I mean, it's a baby. So we kind of think of the next step. We in that home environment is specifically, and maybe people who identify in my home specifically, 2 of the 4 of us are high functioning autism. And so what that means is there's a lot of these types of moments, big and small, where I might think, but why didn't you do the next thing? Like, how did that not connect for you? Why did that not make sense? And that is going to cause me a sense of grief. Now, that's a small example, but if it's that small example after the 9 millionth situation like that, it's going to feel like a huge example. It's going to cause a lot of challenge inside of my heart, and that's called grief. So grief, let's talk about that again. Grief is it's yours too, but in this situation, grief is my emotional reaction from change from familiar patterns. So in that example, whose familiar pattern am I speaking of? mine. It's my familiar pattern. Okay. And so there's something that happened that is different than what I believe is a familiar pattern. It's something that happened that I believe should be a little different, that should have been a little better, that you should have put a little bit more effort into, right? So anytime I run up into an event or a moment where I wish it could be a little different, a little better, or a little more, that's built on my belief system, my belief system. And I'm going to have an emotional reaction to that. That emotional reaction is called grief. So grief comes in, huge pow type experiences. Grief comes in small type of, it's with lesser intensity experiences. Grief builds up. So whether it's big or small, whether there's 1 or 5 million, they build up. Grief builds up. It's cumulative, and it's cumulatively more negative. So when we're talking about living in a neurodiverse home where I identify as neurotypical, and two of the four of us identify as high functioning autism, neurodivergent, then we're going to have some trouble. We're going to have a lot of grief experiences just based on, hi there, thanks for being here, just based on what the familiar pattern should be, according to my belief system, and then what they actually are. And that's gonna be a challenge. And so it's been a really long time. I only started waking up to this. It was actually through COVID. So COVID was very helpful for me in that way, from being home and being able to see and recognize and then get help on board and that kind of thing. So it started, my awareness of this only started about, and I don't mean just mine, I mean all of us in the home, started 2020 and 2021. 2020 is the big one. And has continued to I've continued to grow in awareness, and so have the people in my home and actually around my home, outside of my home. So my husband and I have been married for 25 years, but we've only started to discover these things 3-ish, 4 years ago. So what that means is there were over 20 years of experiences that have been heavy and difficult and tiresome. And we have been at the very bottom of bottom. And we've been, of course, at very high moments as well. So the grief recovery method came in at a really helpful time. I guess anytime grief recovery comes in, it's always really helpful. But these experiences, just like the one I described, where, this sweet dad, oh, he was so sweet. He was in his mid-30s. He gives his baby a drink because she asked for a drink, but then she has to come back a few minutes later and ask for him to open it. Or if he was sharing another example, someone tripped in front of him and he didn't see blood. He did his quick logical assessment of the situation. I don't see blood. She's not crying in pain. Okay, she's okay. And then the feedback was, well, why didn't you help me? Oh, I didn't know. You didn't ask. So there wasn't that natural step into the next thing that might happen. It wasn't asked of him, so he didn't know he should do it, And so my life, in our home, we've had so many experiences like that. And they hurt me. They cause grief inside of me because I think it should be one way. And when it doesn't happen the way I think or I expect or I thought it would have gone, or I hoped it would have gone, it's going to produce a grief reaction inside of me. And over the years, I'm going to start to believe that, okay, he just doesn't care. I guess he just doesn't care. And every time there's another experience that happens where it doesn't go the way I thought it would have, that's going to reinforce my belief, my thought of, well, he just doesn't care. And then enough of that thinking of he just doesn't care is going to tell me, it's going to grow in my mind to, well, he doesn't care about me. And then it's going to grow from there to be, I guess I'm not important. I guess I'm not good enough. And so I start creating a lot of energy based on these events because of my emotional reaction. They keep gumming, they keep getting sparked, they keep getting brought into play, brush fanned into flame, I guess. And then I add a lot of meaning to that without, having a conversation. Even if I do have the conversations, he's going to say, no, of course I care. Of course I do these things, but it's the action that doesn't match. Now I understand so much more. Knowing what we're working with is one thing, but the point is, all throughout, before even having the label of neurodiversity, neurodivergence, high functioning autism, anything like that, before we had that in our home, fortunately I had these tools of grief recovery method. This is basically really from this. I came to the grief recovery. I became aware of the grief recovery method. I started applying it to my personal life 2015, I think. So, fortunately, I started applying it to my marriage and well, most of my marriage at that time. But my son became a teen, and that was really difficult. He was often doing things that didn't match my expectations of where we should be at this stage of life, or what he should be doing, or but I raised you differently, right? So I had all these belief systems inside of me, and when life would hit and it wouldn't match what I thought it should be, it wouldn't meet my hope, it wouldn't meet my expectation, that's going to produce a grief reaction inside of me. So because I've been using the grief recovery method so fluidly and consistently and so frequently, it's been very helpful to pull some of my energy out, because when I'm full of grief, I am also going to be full of a sort of a victim mentality. But I tried, but I did this, but I did this, but I did this. It's just not working. You know, I'm going to be a little bit of a victim. And I'm going to be probably pretty full of judgment and criticism. Even if I keep it quietly to myself, it's still in there about these other people, and they're not meeting. Why would you do that? They're not meeting my belief system. They're not meeting my hopes, dreams, and expectations. So if I'm full of criticism and judgment toward myself, toward the other people, then I'm not really being curious. I'm just trying to get to safety, because those are, these little events, whether they're many little ones mixed with some big ones, it's just a whole thing. They all come up as losses. They're losses of trust, they're losses of safety, they're losses of protection, they're losses of control, losses of love, losses of acceptance or acknowledgement. So the losses build up like huge. A lot of people, hi there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. A lot of people think grief recovery method is just for death. It's for loss. And the hugest losses that I've experienced, and I know that's not a word, but it's going to be a word today. Loss of safety, loss of control, loss of trust, loss of acknowledgement or acceptance. So these are huge losses, right? And they build up. Like I said, grief is cumulative. It's cumulatively more negative. And so we really need help. View request. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, well, hi there. Did you mean to send the request to be in the video? But thank you for being here. I don't want to assume that you meant to send that. So A Crow 48, I think Alex Crow, give me a thumbs up if that is true. That's what you really want to be. So what I use this method for is to help myself get back to neutral. I get these huge emotional flare-ups, whether it's from one huge event or from a buildup of small ones. I can get, especially before having the method, I would get these, my printer's making noise. Shh, I can't hear. But I would get these huge buildups of emotion, and then they started coming out as explosions, and then I would feel bad for my behavior and my reaction, and that wouldn't feel good. And so then I would overcompensate the other way, and I was just like all over the place all the time, which is going to cause additional losses of safety for the members of my home. So it's not even just about me, it's my reactions are causing a loss of safety, a loss of trust and control, or I guess protection for the members of my household. So it's really important that I, number one, become aware that I'm having this like complete mix inside of me, because really I kept it all secret. So I was aware, but I also wasn't, because I didn't talk about it. I never spoke about my honest truth. I carried a lot of bitterness and resentment from past events. So I was always just living like hanging on to pause, hanging on to um trying to manage my emotion without them exploding out where people could see them. Um, I was always clinging to something, and clinging is not really the way that I would love to live. I'd like to live with a little bit more peace and quietness inside. So we have to learn the tools. We have to first become aware that we're having all these emotions inside of us, and that perhaps we can do something to feel better. And a lot of times, if you ever look up statistics for marriage and divorce and one person identifies as neurotypical and one um, identifies as neurodivergent, in this case would be high functioning autism. The stats are horrible in the 90s. Horrible. And that's a terrifying sight. And that's how many marriages do end. They end in divorce. Now, that just not to say that we haven't knocked on the door of it several times. Hi there. Hey, thank you for being here. Not to say that we haven't knocked on the door several times of that type of um, ending in divorce. For me, it didn't feel correct. Now, so this is not a judgment on you if it is correct for you or not. That's not a judgment. It's just for me, it didn't feel correct. I have small children. Just the way that our life is, it didn't work. It didn't seem like the right choice for me. Um, Before I made a big choice, no matter what, and even still today, before I make a big decision, I always do my grief work first. My grief work is a step-by-step action plan to help me get my extra energy out. Because when I'm full of extra energy, that's the only noise I can hear is my pain. It's saying, ow, it's crying out all the time. And then another thing happens, and I'm like, see, why did you do that? Why didn't you do? And then, see, you don't love me. See, you don't care. And so the noise is always loud inside of me. So I use the grief recovery method to help pull out my extra energy and heal. And really, it gives me the opportunity, the way that it's set up, to examine my belief system, to examine my sense of rightness. Because when I'm so focused on my belief system, let's see, it looks like you are wanting to be in. So let me see if I can do that. It keeps coming. Type it in if you type it in here if you were hoping to jump in. Say yes, give me a thumbs up so I know that you're truly requesting it, because I don't want to throw you on there just because we haven't talked about that beforehand. So I just want to be certain that I'm not throwing you into something that you're not looking for. So I use a grief recovery method I used it to become aware of all the emotion I was carrying. I mean, like, really give myself permission to acknowledge it, to also acknowledge that it doesn't feel good, acknowledge that I don't know what to do. And then when I really am honest with myself, I have to be emotionally honest. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I tried all the many things that I read, that I heard, that people told me, that I saw on TV. I tried all the things and they weren't working. So once I'm really honest with myself about that, then I can go into accepting that and then getting recovery components. These recovery components, they're evidence-based, they're step-by-step, they're baby step at a time, and they really do work. So here's the thing, we got to go through a class and learn what the method is step by step, and then we have to apply it. But here's the thing, if you're living in a neurodiverse home, you have to apply it again to new moments, to new. Okay. All right. Awesome. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you clarified. Thank you for that. I feel so much relief. I didn't want to throw you in if you weren't really feeling safe about that. So thank you for your help. Okay. So grief recovery method, evidence-based, step by step. We learn the tools together. We use the tools together. I demonstrate through my own life again and again how to use each individual tool. You apply them, get a little practice, and then we set you up for do some more, do some more, do some more. And so what we do, it's called, follow-up work. We call it PS work. And I do my PS work in really intense stretches of time. I've done PS work every day just because the intensity was so heavy. It was so taking my mind, taking my focus, taking my energy, my concentration, my sleep, taking my gentle. I'm usually a gentle person. I'm an intense person, but I'm usually a gentle person. It was taking my gentleness, it was really like commanding things for me that I didn't want to give it. So that I didn't want to give, I guess. Grief does that. It commands your energy. It commands time. It commands focus and concentration. It commands patience. It just steals it without you giving permission. So applying the grief recovery method to a very intense home helps you set your energy. So for me, it helps me set my energy back to neutral. There is so much stuff that happens around here that I might get in a pocket of time where I need to apply it more frequently. You probably won't, unless maybe you're in a neurodiverse home too. I don't know. But it can be used again and again to help you set your energy back to neutral, which gives you a renewed sense of peace, focus, concentration, stillness, but it gives you the ability to remain curious. And I think being able to remain curious is really important. Being curious about, wait, is that just my expectation? Did I communicate that? Did we agree on that? Is that actually something that is within? So I have two different neurodivergent people in my home, and they're affected differently. And so that lets me be curious about, did that really fit with that person and how they operate? Did this expectation fit with that person and how they operate? Oh, it didn't. Oh, Rachelle, are you possibly um um partially responsible for creating some of the pain that you're feeling? Because if you're creating expectations that they can't meet, that's my responsibility. I need to reevaluate my expectations, why I'm creating them. Why am I continuing to build hope that it's going to be different when nothing has proven to me that it's going to be? That's just a human thing. It's not about being good or bad. Hi, thank you for being here. It's not about being good or bad to create hope. It's normal, it's natural, it's human. And when I create a hope that tells me that I probably have a need that's not being met. Um, and so then I need to sit down with myself and figure out, well, what is the need? And um, do I really need that need met in that specific way? Can it be met in a different way? What would be a way to communicate that? It gives me freedom to stay curious about myself and observant, curious and observant about my family members. I can see patterns and habits. I can identify, oh, that's going to be overwhelming for that person. I'm going to change how I set up my calendar. That's going to be overwhelming for that person. I'm going to only bring one issue to the table at a time and let this other one wait. So it gives me curiosity. It lets me have a sense of humor too. There are just some funny, interesting things that happen around here, and to be able to feel light and have the ability to laugh and not forcefully laugh. I'm not trying to cover over pain with humor. That doesn't work. You could be the funniest person in the room and still really hurting. So that's not going to work. It's helpful for me to change my energy, to change my expectations. Of course, if this is not about physical safety. If you are physically unsafe, you got to get physically safe. So this is not about that. This is about the emotional buildup that we get from mixed neurotypes living in the same home, especially if you're married or in a committed relationship like that. It's going to be difficult. It certainly is, and there's a lot about it that relies on you. You, the neurotypical person, it's a lot going to rely on you to examine yourself and see what kind of expectations did you bring into the relationship. And you have to do this on repeat, unfortunately, but also fortunately. And so the more work that I do and to set myself back to neutral. Every time I notice a hot spot, I do the work to set myself back to neutral. And what it does is place me really firmly in my present moment. The hope is looking for the future to be different. That is a lot of energy. That's a lot of tug on a soul. If there's no indication that a lot of your situation is going to absolutely be different, it's not going to serve you well to try to constantly be pulled in the maybe one day, when today has given you no indication that the one day is going to happen, right? So we have to really do work to be firmly rooted in our present moment. And a mixed neurotype home is really going to come across some of these struggles. When I get my energy out, there are times when I'm like, I cannot do this another second. I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. That's going to leave me, obviously that's a huge place to be. So this is just my own discipline. Before I make any big choices, I apply the grief recovery method to every potential hotspot I can find, whether it includes someone in my home or not. And when I set myself back to neutral, really set myself firmly back in this present moment, it gives me some of the things that might normally pierce me won't. Some of the things that might pierce me do, but it's not super intense, so it doesn't even really register that it pierced me. It lets me live here and not in the future. It lets me be a little less judgmental. It lets me have curiosity about myself and the other person. It helps me identify patterns so I could actually be helpful to the other person. Um, it's just helpful. Let's see. And then, 5 years from now, if you keep doing your work and you recognize that, hey, this isn't feeling the way I wish it would still, and you get to reassess. You get to constantly reassess. You get to constantly make different choices for your life. Um, I personally, again, apply the grief recovery method again and again and again before I make big life altering choices. Um, and if you've already made a big life altering choice, then there you go. You still had a big change that was intent. There's a lot of intensity probably that led you to a divorce or a separation. And so you're still worthy of doing grief work there as well, because you still are having an emotional, remember I said in the beginning, grief is cumulative. It's cumulatively negative. So you still want to get that energy out so that you have created space and freedom, and you have more space for consideration of perhaps a new relationship, whatever that's going to look like for you. It's about creating space and freedom inside of yourself. It's about it looking at your belief system and where have you created expectations and not. It's about acknowledging that, damn it, I'm hurting. I'm freaking hurting. I'm down so low. I don't even think I can get back up. How do I get myself back up? Because if we are relying on someone else to change their behavior. Again, this is not about physical abuse, okay? This is not about that type of thing. But emotional buildup is huge and it could feel awful. So if you recognize that you're down on the floor, but if you believe the only way for you to get back up on your feet is if that other person changes, that other person does something, that other person, well, if you are living in as a neurotypical with a neurodivergent, that's not going to happen most likely. Most likely, they're not going to do the work to change. Maybe sips of it. It's going to be a while though. It's kind of a slow motion usually. So really, it's going to be up to you. If you want to feel different, you're going to have to do the work to feel different, to help yourself feel different. And that's why I use the grief recovery method all the time. And I tell you what, it's so frustrating sometimes because I want to stay mad. I want to stay hurt. I want to stay, no, this is not okay. I'm running in my mind. I want to run. And then I do my stupid grief work, and I'm just kidding. It's not actually stupid, but I do my stupid grief work. That's just an attitude I'm having. And then the intensity's gone, and it's like, shoot, I guess I don't really have a reason to be upset anymore because I could see what happened there. I could see it. Okay. All right. I'm ready to dive back in. And that could be so amazing and frustrating at the same time. And not to say that I'm like super fast sometimes. Sometimes I'm just busy and I can't sit down and get my grief work done. And so it might take, 2 days. I won't let it go longer than a week, ever, 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 ever. It's not worth my physical health being affected by, just look up if you use the word stress. Stress means grief. It's just a different word for it. Anxiety means grief. It's just a different word for it. Um, so, if you are feeling stress, you could look up the effects of stress on your body, or the effects of unresolved emotion, aka grief, on your body. It has very physical consequences to your health. I don't want that. I mean, look at this. Look at this. I had a lymph node that's been giant, like gave me a giant turkey neck right here, just right here. Who gets that? It's still kind of hard, but it's going down. I got a sore on my dang face. Obviously, grief had been building up, but I was thinking it's not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal. And there we go. And it was a big deal because my body showed me that it was. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry. So I sat down and I did my grief work. That was Monday, I think it was. I had a few pieces that I needed to knock out, a few, hot spots of energy that I needed to soothe and settle and let them start healing properly. Just carrying them along is not healing. So I know that was a lot. I probably rambled. I don't even know what I said myself. So do you have any thoughts, wonders, questions, anything that you're wondering? You can toss them out here. I'll wait for a couple of minutes. Otherwise, you can put things in the comments. Um, you can always instant message me or whatever, that private message. I don't know, one of those. The recording will be up on YouTube later, so you can watch it back and ask me questions if you missed something or if I said something incorrectly. Hey, I'm human. I'm human. It's very possible that I said something that was confusing or backwards. That happens. That happens. So it's not like I'm reading a script, It just happens. So what kind of thoughts and wonders? I have no idea. I've probably been going on for quite some time. So I definitely want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, checking in, dropping in. I do want you to know that you're heard, you're important. I do get it that it's such an intense home if you are neurotypical, or actually just a neurodiverse home. For us, it's neurotypical with neurodivergent, high functioning autism. So that creates really difficult, tiresome moments, and pretty frequently. Usually these days they roll right off, but if they start building up, there you go. I get signs of it. I try to catch them before I start getting physical signs. But again, I'm human. I get distracted too. And I hear you that the home can be hard and challenging to navigate, especially because we probably didn't learn tools for navigating these types of relationships. If you're a parent, by the way, with a child who is neurodivergent, you are probably exhausted, worn out, tired. I went through the messages of I failed, I'm not a good mom. I just replay all my shoot, I wish I would have. And again, grief is the emotional impact from moments I wish could be different, better, or more. It's my emotional impact from those moments where my hopes, dreams, or expectations were not met the way I thought they would be. And that emotional reaction that builds up inside of me may have been caused by someone else's behavior or lack of behavior, but the emotional response that I'm carrying is my responsibility. And the grief recovery method is how I recover from each one of those moments. And it works like a charm. And I almost want to say, unfortunately, because like I said, sometimes I just want to be mad. But that doesn't work. That's not healthy. That doesn't feel good. Let's see. I think I covered at least the few little thoughts that I had shared here for myself. Um, thank you for being here. I love you. This was Tea and Me at 3. I hope to be back next Thursday for Tea and Me at 3. Bring your mug. Look how cute that is. It's just so simple. It's so simple and precious. I just love it. So anyway, I love you guys. Thank you for being here. See you next time. Bye, everybody. Oh. What was the main topic of the conversation? Oh, good question. The main topic of the conversation was, Rebecca, if you're still here, or Rebecca Wings of Freedom. Oh, hi there, by the way. The main topic was mixed neurotype, living in a mixed neurotype home, and how I use the grief recovery method to help me survive, thrive, function, stay joyful, stay peaceful. What else? It's hard to to build up or even consider joy when you're full of hurt. That doesn't feel good. I hate that. I hate those moments. I hate them for me. I hate them for you. They're human. They happen. But yeah, does that answer your question? Yeah. All right there. Well, thanks for checking in, Rebecca. Everybody, I love you. I'll see you next time. Bye.